Afternoon, Your Excellency, and
No
it's a
problem.
pleasure to meet you virtually. My name is Ruhee Neog. I'm director of the Institute of Peace and Conflict Studies, which is a think tank in Delhi. And this conversation is part of a project that my organization, the Institute of Peace and Conflict Studies, is bringing out in collaboration with the Hans-Seidel Stiftung India. And what we're trying to do through this project is go into a bit more granular detail on what precisely the term vast potential that has been used frequently and continues to be used frequently with regard to the India-EU strategic partnership means in policy terms. And also at the end of this exercise, and this exercise consists of a series of conversations, uh, we'd like to look at the sector-specific pathways in which cooperation can be operationalized along the priority areas that have been identified by both governments. And I'm very grateful to you, Your Excellency, for giving us this broader geopolitical lay of the land from an institutional EU perspective.
My pleasure. Thank you for inviting.
Thank you. So what I'd like to begin with is perhaps an obvious question, but I think one that needs asking nonetheless, which is, in your view, what are the factors, whether they're strategic, geopolitical, economic, etc., that have precipitated this accelerated, attention on the India-EU partnership, which, as you know, has otherwise been of marginal foreign policy attention to both entities?
Well, I think you're right to say that the EU-India strategic partnership has been gaining in breadth and scope. This is not entirely new. This was happening in the past 2 years, let's say. But it's true also that in the past few months there has been an acceleration. Now, one could also say that the COVID pandemic has accelerated a number of existing trends. The world is becoming a more complex place when you compare to the period before the epidemic. It's more complex, more multipolar, at times more erratic, I would also say. So against this background, I think it is only natural that the EU and India come together, considering that they share the same core principles and values: democracy, respect for rule of law, and a strong commitment to multilateralism. And let me stress particularly this last aspect, that the need to defend the rules-based system of international governance, and to promote a cooperative approach to international relations. I think these ever more relevant post-COVID, and the European Union and India can be key partners in these. So our ambition it's certainly to foster a dynamic strategic partnership based on the shared values I mentioned earlier as open societies, but also on a set of converging interests which are becoming more and more apparent. I think that together we can help, we can contribute in shaping the international agenda and in fostering a cohesive response to the major global challenges we are all facing.
Right. Well, thank you very much. What I'd like to pick up from there, Your Excellency, is, you referred to a convergence of interests. You also talked about the possibility of shaping norms, perhaps even the rule-making potential of this partnership in the global order. The question that comes to mind for me is, there has been a discernible widening of priorities now within this partnership. Well, not now, as you said, in the recent past, to more emphatically include strategic security concerns. And in this regard, we've seen, again, in the span of, I would say, a relatively short period of time, also accelerated attention on the Indo-Pacific within the EU. We've also seen some countries having come out recently with announcements of their positions, their formal institutional positions on the Indo-Pacific. So what is the expectation of such an institutional EU vision emerging, in the near future? on the Indo-Pacific? And how do you think, India-EU cooperation could play out, particularly with regard to strategic security concerns and shaping norms within the framework of the Indo-Pacific?
Well, I think I agree with what you say, that over the past couple of years, there has been an increased focus on the Asia region in Europe, and the new attention devoted to issues such as connectivity, for instance, strengthening connectivity between Europe and Asia, and a stronger focus also on security, on the security setting. As you refer to, some member states have actually developed national strategies focusing on the Indo-Pacific region. The EU has also published a number of papers I'm sure you're familiar with, the connectivity strategy, the India strategy, a paper on security in Asia overall. The meaning of these papers is basically that in today's globalized world, Asia is our immediate neighbor. And beside, let's say, the theoretical thinking, we have in place an operation, an anti-piracy operation off the Horn of Africa, the Atalanta operation, which I think is a good case in point. It demonstrates that the EU can indeed act and work as a security provider. With a positive regional impact. Actually, the Indian Navy has also cooperated with Atalanta, at least on one or two occasions. But to make a long story short, I think that this more comprehensive EU approach to Asia builds on two pillars: the support to multilateralism and the need to defend the rules-based system of international governance. This also applies to issues such as freedom of navigation or overflight, for instance. In more general terms, I think we can all agree that a rising Asia committed to cooperation and a rules-based system of world governance is to everyone's interest.
Right. You mentioned a few of the areas within the very big basket of issues that have been identified for cooperation within the ambit of the strategic partnership. I wonder if you could speak to some of, or rather some elements of these priority areas, and what, in your view, could be the opportunities, but also perhaps the structural challenges in actualizing bilateral and multilateral cooperation. And in that regard, do you see any divergences between the EU and India on certain issues?
Well, as you said, we are developing our strategic partnership in all its various facets. There are many. We just touched on foreign policy, security, connectivity, defense of multilateralism. Let me touch on a few which are particularly crucial, I believe, not just for the EU and India, but for the international community at large. Health, climate change, and the digital future. Well, health, I think, is inevitable priority for all of us. We need to overcome the pandemic and to bring about a sustainable global economic recovery. The European Union, as you may know, has been at the forefront of the international endeavor to fight in a cohesive and consistent manner the epidemic. We mobilized international communities through the COVAX initiative to ensure universal access to COVID vaccines when ready. And on this, obviously, India as a global pharma hub is also key to the international response to the pandemic. In broader terms, if I may say so, the pandemic has demonstrated that the correct response to global challenges is to work together. And again, a multilateral response is the correct response. The second priority I was mentioning is about climate change and the green recovery, because while we fight COVID, we cannot forget that we have an existential issue to address, which is climate change and the loss of biodiversity. Fighting climate change and protecting the environment is as important as ever. And the European Union has launched what we call the Green Deal, which is based on the assumption, on the proposition that there is no trade-off between economic growth and protecting the environment. And the post-COVID response must be green in order for it to be sustainable. Now, both the European Union and India are crucial players if we want a successful international response and if you want the recovery to be green. We have insight, not in a not too distant future, the COP26 in Glasgow. We will celebrate the anniversary of the Paris Agreement very soon in December. And that's an important anniversary to celebrate because it's a moment when the international community came together to address a global challenge. We need to do more of that. And we need to act so that COP26 can be ambitious and successful. And let me also mention the COP in Kunming, the biodiversity COP. It may be less in the global radar screen, but it's actually equally important that we protect our biodiversity. I'm sure you must have read that many believe that actually the development of this epidemic is also related to the loss of biodiversity. So the European Union, when it comes to climate change, has taken a very clear lead in domestic terms. We want to be a climate neutral continent by 2050. Other countries are also following the same pattern, and for us, it's extremely important to have India as an active part in the same endeavor. So I've mentioned health, climate change, and let me also briefly touch also on the digital future, because in a way these three aspects are also interconnected. The digital transformation is another cornerstone of economic and social recovery after the pandemic. And as we, I mean, it is well demonstrated by the way we are interacting now. I mean, the COVID has brought to the fore all digital applications to the economic and social life. And it has also highlighted the need for a rule book for the digital economy and for society to cover a vast array of issues from data use and privacy, infrastructure. We need the proper infrastructure to be able to communicate on the digital world, and security, cybersecurity. So we have both great opportunities, benefits ahead, and also risks. Cybersecurity is a special challenge. And the fact that the EU and India share the same democratic values and are both open societies bring us together in shaping a vision for the future, for a digital future which is human-centric, which is grounded in democratic values. So we want to foster innovation, but we also want innovation which is conducive to human development and respectful of individual rights and freedoms. The use of data is a clear issue. India is currently developing its law on data protection, and the European Union has done so with the GDPR, which has been serving as well, if I would say a model, if you pass me this expression, but at very least as an important precedent, let's say, in a number of countries which are going through the same endeavor. What we hope is obviously that since we start from the same propositions, the same values, we will see a convergence also when it comes to the regulation of data protection. Cybersecurity, we have already mentioned. I think that in broad terms, in any case, a digital future is something which can offer us a platform for cooperation to the EU and India, again, based on shared values and converging interests.
Right. It's a validation of our work, Your Excellency, through your identification of, the three anchors, which is health, climate, and environment, and technology, because these are exactly the conversations that are going to inform, the entirety of our project. But what I would like to tease out a little bit further is you made very brief mention, I think earlier in the conversation, about security. What are your thoughts on counterterrorism cooperation?
Well, that's also an important dimension of our cooperation, and I'm glad to refer here to our counterterrorism dialogue. The last edition has taken place only a few days ago, and we have a number of activities also bringing together experts from the two sides to discuss about the state of play and about the risks, obviously, that we are all facing in the current global scenario. So it's another dimension which is developing, and I'm glad to say that also on this specific respect, the summit in July has injected further momentum in the conversation.
Right. One of the terms, Your Excellency, that has featured prominently through our conversation today is values. And we know that both India and the EU emphasize values such as democracy, such as inclusiveness, a reformed multilateralism, human rights, and so on, within, their individual foreign policy discourses, as well as in the context of the partnership. My question is, and of course, it is in their interest and it is in the interest of the partnership to emphasize a values-based discourse. Having said that, I wonder if you see any differences in perception whatsoever on these values, perhaps definitionally or how they are applied. And do you think these differences in perception have the potential to throw up obstacles in the relationship?
Well, look, I think what emerges also from our brief exchange is that we do have a remarkable convergence of interests based on these shared values and the fact that both the EU and India are open society. But this does not mean, obviously, that we always see eye to eye on everything. And I think that in a mature relationship, we can also accept and respect divergences if and when they arise.
Right. Well, I'd like to thank you very much, Your Excellency. I thought this was an absolutely brilliant, although short, but absolutely packed with information conversation. And what I'm going to do after this is, pull out the key takeaways that can inform our brainstorming exercise and the final report, which I hope to share with you once it is published.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency.
Thank you.